Welcome to Face the Nation. I'm Lesley Stahl. In the State of the Union address this week, President Reagan showed his old spunk and vitality in his delivery. But the speech seemed to provoke a new atmosphere of confrontation and partisan defiance.
Certainly it was not wrong to try to secure freedom for our citizens held in barbaric captivity.
The president's defense of his Iran policy brought the Republicans to their feet as the Democrats sat silent. Some portions of the speech actually produced hooting from the Democrats, who showed unusual impoliteness, if not outright ridicule.
This was the worst speech. It had the presence of somebody who's struggling to be a part of the stage. And I think what we're seeing here is the end of the Reagan era.
But the president demonstrated his own brand of defiance by vetoing the clean water bill that Congress overwhelmingly supported.
I just said no.
Yeah! There were reports of a meeting with sharp clashes between the new Democratic leaders and the president.
I think what we saw was maybe the opening round of what the Democrats planned for the next 2 years, and that was coming on strong, really giving the president the business on the budget.
The Senate Intelligence Committee issued its report on the Iran-Contra affair, outlining a pattern of deceit where administration officials lied to one another, to Congress, and to the public. The committee chairman holds the chief of staff responsible.
I think that Mr. Reagan should resign his position in the national interest. He's the wrong man to serve this president at this time.
On Friday, his last day as White House spokesman, Larry Speakes offered his own prescription.
When we sit in the Situation Room in the White House and launch a policy initiative, let's judge it by how it would look if it showed up in tomorrow's headlines.
What is the state of the Reagan presidency? We'll ask outgoing spokesman Larry Speakes and House Democratic Whip Tony Coelho of California. President Reagan versus the Democrats, an issue facing the nation.
From CBS News, Washington, Face the Nation, with CBS News National Affairs correspondent Lesley Stahl. This portion of Face the Nation is sponsored by the financial professionals at Payne Weber.
Out here, it's me alone against the course. But in the financial world, you need all the help you can get. You need the Payne Weber Army behind you.
Even golf legends can use some financial backup. Payne Weber is ready to roll, putting all its resources at your command. We believe the quality of life just might depend on the quality of your financial services.
Thank you, Payne Weber. Now that's the kind of army you want behind you.
The Marines asked for a fighter to be based right at the front, so McDonnell Douglas built the AV-8B. Hospitals asked for a way out of the paper blizzard, so we build the information systems now used in 1 out of 5 U.S. hospitals. Airlines want to save fuel, so we're testing aircraft with new kinds of jet engines to cut fuel consumption over 40%. We are creating breakthroughs in aviation, space, and information systems. We're McDonnell Douglas.
With us, Larry Speakes, who yesterday left his job as President Reagan's spokesman. You've been his spokesman for 6 years. Let me ask you something before we get down to you and the press and you and the president. There's a report this morning that President Reagan has been keeping a diary, handwritten notes, that the Senate committee investigating the Iran scandal may ask him for. Did you know about these notes? When does he take them? You don't know about?
No, it's a brand new one on me. I saw it in the paper for the first time this morning. Was not aware that the president kept notes or a diary of any type.
Well, let me ask you, what do you know what the president will do if they do ask for them? Will he invoke executive privilege, as has been suggested?
Well, I can't predict on that. The president has been very, very open with the congressional committees, with all of the investigations. He's spoken to the Tower Commission, and he's been very open with allowing cabinet officers to go to the Hill. We've submitted a lot of documents to the Hill without a hitch. So I guess it would be a question of whether the president felt that he was giving in on something that might bind future presidents to a precedent. And that would be his main consideration. But his whole idea is to give as much as he can to the congressional committees.
Well, I hate to say this, but Richard Nixon said very much the same thing when they tried to get the tapes, you know, invoking the national security issue and so forth. And the court said, when we're investigating a crime, that doesn't matter.
Well, I don't think with the president it would be so much of a national security issue as it might be a president issue for future presidents. But his whole attitude has been, give them everything, let's get to the bottom of it.
Didn't Nixon, didn't the courts rule that that argument really didn't matter in a criminal investigation?
Well, it could be. I think it's a matter of interpretation, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of lawyers pontificating on it in the next few weeks.
Okay, but you don't know what the thinking is.
No, I really don't know.
But you're really gone, aren't you?
That's right.
Now that you're a civvy, and this is your first interview,
right.
Not speaking for the president, we're all hoping that you can show us a new candidness and perhaps tell us your own observations as a citizen. Starting with the mood, if you will, there's an impression that we have reached the gloomiest point in President Reagan's term in office. People are saying he's irrelevant. He was hooted by the Democrats at the State of the Union address. They showed him no respect. What do you see happening now to the Ronald Reagan presidency?
Well, since I did turn into a pumpkin last night at midnight, and it's my first interview as a former White House spokesman, I certainly will be as candid as I can be. As far as the presidency, I believe there's a great reservoir of goodwill out there for Ronald Reagan. He's accomplished much in 6 years. And this Iranian crisis has been dominating the news for many weeks, as we all know. But frankly, I believe the American public is tiring of it. They're tuning out on it. Nobody's got to any specific problems affecting the president. So he's come clean. He's offered as much as he can to the congressional committees, and that's his attitude.
Newsweek has a new poll that's coming out that was taken after the speech that shows the American people think Congress can better handle the problems of the country. Now that's new, brand new.
It's probably new, but I think when you see how the question's phrased, it might be a little different, particularly if you phrase the question. I think the people want an American president running American foreign policy.
You know, what strikes you is what the Democrats said after that speech. And that is that the president is presenting old and tired ideas, nothing new, there was nothing. That's what Ronald Reagan used to say about the Democrats. And they're turning it on him. Do you not see some important sea change happening right now?
Not really. I think the Democrats, of course, setting the stage for the presidential elections, and it's 2 years down the road, but they're already off and running. And we're seeing a lot of that rhetoric that we will see between now and Election Day for a new president.
You sound just like the White House spokesman, Larry.
Well, I'm one who believes in Ronald Reagan. I believe what we're doing is important. I believe what we've done is important. And I think there's a desire from the American people that the president carry on. There's much to be done. The Democrats talk about old ideas. Well, they've never acted on the ideas. Either accept them or come up with something better. That's my challenge to the Democratic Congress this year.
What's it like at the White House? Are people depressed? We hear the president's been depressed.
Well, you may have heard it, but it's wrong. It's dead wrong. The president is going about his job just as he's always gone about it, and that is working hard, proposing programs, planning on a good final 2 years.
Well, wait a minute, wait a minute. Come on, Larry. The president really isn't proposing programs. Now, come on. You said you were going to be candid with us. How hard does the president work these days? Is it less than he used to? Tell us the truth. I don't think so. The president's had a bit of recuperation since that surgery in early January, but he's practically back to a full day on the job. And, you know, the preoccupation with Iran is on the outside, not on the inside. We've got a lot going there, and those fellows are working hard, and I know they'll continue. Why do we keep hearing little hints of trouble with the president? He's not involved, he's disengaged. More than we've always heard he wasn't that engaged or that he didn't focus on details. But we hear more lately. A group of Republicans went to meet him 2 weeks ago and came out and told reporters privately that they were worried because the president was answering questions with non sequiturs. Well, I wasn't at that meeting, so I can't be specific on that one, but you know, the reported exchange with Jim Wright the other day in the leadership meeting, the new Speaker of the House was there, challenged the president. It was more or less that old argument of we're spending too much on defense and how are we going to get it out of the domestic programs and so forth. But I tell you what, the Gipper was back. Ronald Reagan stepped up there and he spent 10 minutes in a rebuttal to Jim Wright. That was pretty exciting business there, sitting in a leadership meeting. It was a good last congressional leadership meeting for me.
Well, the president just challenged him with a number of facts and figures and said, you know, we've got to get down to business. Let's have good exchanges, but let's get something done. It's too important.
All right, I want to ask you about that confrontation, but let's finish off about his state of mind and this business that he's not focusing on details and not really, you know, some people say that the fact that he has been uninvolved is really why Iran happened, that other people took it over because he wasn't really concentrating.
Well, I think any whispers by people who come in and out of the White House about Ronald Reagan not being involved and on top of his job and there for the final 2 years is hogwash. But now Iran is a different question. The president set a good policy into motion. He thought he had good people carrying it out, and those people misserved the president. They were patriots. They wanted to do the job. They wanted to carry out the president's policy. But good judgment is an important part of patriotism. Also, there was a small group that knew about it, and they were the people that carried it out and got off track on it. The president has said mistakes were made, and we've taken every step we can to see that that these mistakes are corrected and that they don't happen again in this presidency or future presidencies.
You said you thought it happened because there was an obsession with secrecy. Well, how did that come about?
That is, first of all, the government leaks like a sieve.
Isn't it great?
There's no doubt about that. And I think there was probably a mistrust from the NSC, of Defense Department, State Department, and they said if we let these fellas in on it, this program will not get off the ground in opening that strategic contact with Iran.
That's the president's thinking.
I wouldn't say it was the president's thinking so much about not trusting the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, because they were involved in it. But once the operational details got started, then the NSC cut them out of the program.
Well, the president cut them out, too. I mean, are you saying that the president allowed the NSC to cut these people out, or that he didn't even know they cut them out?
No, the operational details were left up to the NSC, but the NSC did not share them with Defense and State. I think the president was perfectly aware of how the program was being carried out, the methods, but not some of the things that were done in carrying it out. So you hire good people, you think they're going to do the job. If they don't do it, then they can cause problems for you.
Ollie North says that he had the president's authority. McFarland says he had the president's authority. Why do they think that?
Well, they had the president's broad mandate and instructions, but they didn't have the authority to get off the track on some of these things.
Well, why do they think they did, though? What do you think is happening in there that they would think they did when perhaps they didn't?
Well, I think you have to get down to the specifics, and that's sort of a broad generalization that you have to answer on specifics. Certainly they had the president's authority to sell arms to Iran. That was approved by the president in the executive order. But did they have authority to divert funds
But they thought they did.
To imply that we were trading arms for terrorists? No, they did not have that
But they
authority.
thought they did. That's really the point.
Well, they say they thought they did.
Oh, so you don't think they're...
Well, in my judgment, and of course I'm sitting from a distance and doing a lot of catching up, as we all are, about what happened and when it happened.
Don Regan, is he back in total charge at the White House?
Well, he never was out. Don Regan is...
He was down.
He's a good, solid manager. He's a chief executive of the first order from the business world that came in and has applied some of those management skills to the White House. I think he's been the victim of the greatest campaign of get him out that I have ever seen in all my years in Washington. But what Don Regan has done is just put his nose to the grindstone and doing his job. You may not see him publicly,
Why
but that's
not?
no sign he's not doing his
Well,
job.
why is he invisible?
Well, he thought he was a little bit ill-served by some of his contacts with the press in that period leading up in November, leading up to Thanksgiving and so forth. So he said, if that's not working, you know, why don't I just keep quiet a little while to do my job?
Senator Boren, who's the chairman of the Intelligence Committee that just published this report, says he should resign, that he's responsible for keeping the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense out of the mix on Iran. He's responsible and he should resign.
Well, Dave Boren is a good friend, and I don't want to take him too much head on, but Senator Boren is wrong on this one. I think he's trying to say that Don Regan let the underlings and the NSC in and kept the Secretary of State out. That's wrong. NSC is a separate operation from the Chief of Staff, and he doesn't control what they do. It was deliberately set up that way.
He didn't control Mr. Poindexter?
Not really. It was deliberately set up that way so that a a foreign policy advisor could have direct access to the president, and some big, powerful chief of staff couldn't block the Oval Office door.
There was a sort of impression that one reason Mr. Reagan wanted Poindexter for that job was because he felt he could control him.
No, I don't think that's true. I think Poindexter was a good, solid tactician that knew foreign policy, and that's why he wanted him.
Okay, one final question. Nancy Reagan. How powerful is she really? Now, you said you were going to try to be real candid.
I will
now,
be
this
candid.
is difficult for you. I know it is.
No, it's not difficult at all. Mrs. Reagan is an important figure in her husband's life, as any woman is in her husband's life. And she talks over with him what's happening, as any husband and wife would do. But at the same time, she's deeply interested in the success or failure of this administration, as we all are. And she makes her viewpoint known, and her judgments are very, very good.
Is she, in a way, a sort of second chief of staff?
No, I wouldn't think so. You know, first of all, she's concerned that her husband get over his surgery, that he pace himself properly in his recuperation as any average citizen would do. But on the other hand, she's interested in perceptions of the presidency. You know, the Reagans have worked long and hard to get to the White House, and they've had a beautiful 6 years. And I don't think either one of them, and I'm not either, interested in letting anything tarnish that presidency. And we're going to work hard to put this Iranian thing behind us.
It's still we. Very, very quickly, what are you going to miss the most?
Oh, I've often said that I'll miss the give and take of the press corps, but I guess I'll miss most the man that comes in and builds the fire in the fireplace in that beautiful office in the West Wing.
Well, I'm going to miss you. And thank you very much for being our guest this morning.
Thank you.
We'll be back with the Democratic view.
I've always said there are 9,999 ways to say no comment, and I've used virtually every one of them.
Hi, gentlemen. I'm Jimmy Connors, and it's about time you met my partner, my financial side. Let's do it.
All successful companies and people have a financial side.
Let's go, partner.
It comes with success. But success in the financial world doesn't happen automatically. And sooner or later, you'll find you need some help.
We need some help.
You need Payne Weber behind you. We're capital management teams expert in corporate, government, or individual financial matters. Together, leveraging our strength in the marketplace with a dedication to the most creative financial solutions possible. Payne Weber gives you the financial backup you deserve. Because we believe whether you run a company or invest in one, the quality of life just might depend on the quality of your financial services.
All right. Thank you, Payne Weber. You're welcome. Hey, you're going to have to loosen up. We got Payne Weber on our side now.
Put Macintosh in the middle of your company, and some remarkable things start to happen. Those who shoot from the hip suddenly show signs of organization. And those who live by the book show glimmers of creativity. Ideas surface from people you thought had retired. Reports that could bore the dead sparkle with graphic clarity. Your 8th floor will actually communicate with your 7th. Presentations begin to border on the flamboyant. And your most tireless worker will actually have time to take an afternoon off. And a budding genius will be found where once a face was seen.
That's very good.
But not heard.
Very good.
And one by one, each and every person in your company will begin to discover the power of Macintosh. The power to be your best.
Joining us now, Congressman Tony Coelho of California, the number 3 man in the House Democratic leadership. He's in West Virginia attending a Democratic policy meeting. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Good morning, Lesley.
You're attending this meeting. You yourself said after the State of the Union address that we are seeing the end of the Reagan era. Is that generally what all you Democrats have concluded, and is your meeting sort of based on that read of what's happening?
Well, Lesley, the joke going on down here is that President Reagan had a 6-year script for an 8-year term. I think sort of typifies what most of us feel, that Ronald Reagan is now speaking about the past and defending the past, and we're looking forward to the next decade, and we're trying to deal with the next decade. The best example of that is the Clean Water Bill. That shows that we're interested in the future. The president vetoed it, tried to imply that it's a $20 billion program, but it really is a $2 billion program for the next 9 years, each of those 9 years. So that's typical of what's happening.
Aren't you a little concerned of writing Ronald Reagan off a little too early? He always comes back. He's been down before. There's a tendency to do this with this man, to sort of underestimate him. We've all watched him for 6 years bounce back from Bitburg and from the setback at Reykjavik. Boy, he came roaring back from that. So is this not in the back of your minds?
Well, Lesley, we understand that. I'm a Californian, as you know, and he was governor for 8 years, and you didn't count him out then. The difference is that Ronald Reagan always had the one thing going through all these things, that people believed him. What's happening today is that people are not sure what to believe. They still like him, there's no doubt about that, but they're not sure what to believe. Obviously, as you just heard, people were lying to everybody in the White House. People were lying to the press, they're lying to the American public, all coming out of the White House. I was intrigued with Larry's comments. He was in effect saying that the president really knows what's going on. Don Regan doesn't know because the National Security Advisor doesn't have control over him, but they didn't tell the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense. The president didn't know that, but I guess Poindexter has so much power he can just lie to Schultz and to Weinberger. I was intrigued with Larry's comments, but I think that's typical of what's going on. There's so much lying, so much game playing going on in the White House. The public is sort of sitting back and saying, well, let's move on to the future, and that's what's happening.
All right, let's talk about right now. There seems to be a feisty, confrontational mood among you Democrats toward the White House. You were at that meeting Larry was talking about. It's been described as hostile. What was it like? And what was the exchange between the Speaker and the President? What did it go like?
Well, Lesley, I was intrigued. Of course, it was my first one as the new leader in the House. It was my first one, and I was intrigued because it was very frank. I mean, I should say that they're supposed to be half-hour meetings, and for the first 25 minutes, the President had different secretaries, cabinet officers, speak about different things that he felt that was interesting. Bob Byrd said, well, Mr. President, we have a constitutional obligation to come down here and listen, and we will. But you also have a constitutional obligation to listen to us, because we're co-equals, and we hope you will. And basically what happened is that after this, the Speaker got into a discussion of what are our priorities. We disagree with the White House. We disagree with the Republicans as to the priorities. We think that we should be taking care of the middle class and trying to broaden that base. We as Democrats have always wanted to put more people in the middle class. Less and less people are there now. They're more and more wealthy, more poor. Those are our priorities. The President kept on saying we need to have $27 billion more for defense. The Speaker was saying, come up with the money. We'll be glad to consider it.
Did the Gipper come fighting back, as Larry Speak said?
Well, Lesley, I was intrigued. I'd be honest and say that I thought that the President did come back. But it was interesting. The President gave us his rhetoric of the campaigns of '76, of 1980, and 1984. Larry talked about all the facts and figures he had, but those are facts and figures that all of us have heard over and over and over again. It was intriguing. It was sort of like snap, and he went right into his political rhetoric, his campaign rhetoric. I thought he was forceful, but it's stuff that all of us have heard over and over again.
All right. Let's move on to talk about you Democrats, okay? One of the first matters of business that you intend to bring up is the trade bill, as I understand it. And I wonder if in your meetings down there in Greenbrier, you aren't worrying about the possibility of triggering a trade war. Because the bill you all passed last year uses the word retaliation in it. We're going to retaliate against foreign governments that have tariffs. They're going to retaliate back. We're already seeing that with our European friends over agricultural products. What are you all saying about the possibility of us entering a trade war in the future with our closest friends around the world?
Well, Lesley, our point is that it's great to build up this great national defense and protect ourselves against our enemies. But what's happening is we're letting our allies destroy us. We've been saying this for about 3 years, myself in particular. I was excited to see the President's State of the Union where he started referring to the fact that we just can't have free trade, we've got to have fair trade. Those are our words. He also said the United States can no longer be a patsy to our allies. Those are our words. We're excited that the president has finally started to understand what we're talking about when we talk about our trade problems.
But tell me about the concern about a trade war developing.
Well, let me just point out to you that unless we stand up to our allies and tell them that we mean business, they're not going to back off. When you talked about the conflict with our European allies, what did happen? We stood up and we said, we're going to do X if you don't take off those unfair barriers. We don't want to put up barriers, but we want to be treated fairly by our allies. As soon as we said that, what happened? We reached an agreement. They backed off. And I think we got to do that to the Japanese and to the Europeans and tell them, look, we're friends, but don't take advantage of us. And if you want to take advantage of us, we're going to deny you the same thing that you deny us. No different. We just want fairness.
Well, do you think we're going to enter now into an era of great, enormous economic tensions with our closest friends? Is that inevitable? The only...
Well, I don't think so. I think that what our friends and our allies need is to know that we're serious. As soon as they know that, what has happened for the last 6 years, and it's developed on the Reagan clock, the Republican clock, is that in the last 6 years they've taken advantage of us because they've heard the rhetoric, and you know, there's a lot of rhetoric that comes out of that White House on a lot of things and very little action. But a lot of rhetoric that free trade, and our allies, our friends, said wonderful, and they took advantage of it.
Is this the issue that is going to dominate the congressional agenda for the next few months? And we're very quickly running out of time, sir.
We're going to move a trade bill by the end of April. It'll start in the Senate right at that time. No, it's not going to dominate it. We're going to pass a bill. We're going to send it to the president. We're going to have Republican support in both the House and the Senate.
Thank you very much, Congressman Tony Coelho. We'll be back with a final word.
Satellites need maintenance and refueling, so McDonnell Douglas is helping NASA plan a space station that will be an ideal satellite service center. Communities asked for peace and quiet, so we developed a tail rotor that cuts our helicopter's noise in half. Aerospace plane designers need a low-cost way to test ideas. Our simulators evaluate flight systems before they're built. We are creating breakthroughs in aviation, space, and information systems. We're McDonnell Douglas.
Investing these days is a little like you playing tennis against Jimmy Connors. You're going to need all the professional help you can get. PaineWebber's capital management team is ready to provide that help right now. Because whether you run a company or invest in one, PaineWebber believes the quality of life just might depend on the quality of your financial services.
Hey, great match. Thanks, Jimmy. Thank you, PaineWebber. Next time I'm with those guys on my team, okay?
Actually, there is no final word. We have run out of time. I'm Lesley Stahl. Have a good week.
This portion of Face the Nation was sponsored by the financial professionals at PaineWebber and by Apple Computer, personal computers that give you the power to be your best.
The Houston Rockets, sparked by the all-star power of the Towers, take on the Atlanta Hawks and the flash attack of Dominique today on CBS Sports.
This is CBS.
Where do you go for mobility equipment? Ostomy supplies, respiratory products, exercise equipment. Where do you go? To the name you know, Hammer. For all your home health care needs, it's Hammer Medical Supply. And Hammer bills Medicare and insurance companies for you, too. Hammer Medical Supply, your complete home health care headquarters. Hammer, Des Moines, Newton, and Oskaloosa.
So you think you got troubles? Take the curious Savage family at the Ingersoll. Mrs. Savage is locked up in a home for the mentally unfit. Senator Savage gets more threatening letters than any other congressman. Lilybelle Savage is in her 6th divorce, and Judge Savage has had more of his decisions reversed than any other judge in history. And these are the sane people. Call us for our 100th production. 1 ticket free with the purchase of 3, available to the first 100 people only each night. Call now for details. The Curious Savage at the Ingersoll Dinner Theater.
On Monday's Midday, we'll talk about what to give besides your love for Valentine's Day.
And I'll preview this year's Blank Park Zoo Winter Festival '87.